Tēnā iwi ina mana, tēnā kora katoa, no mahare mai. I want you to imagine it's April 2020, and a young woman named Sarah has just married John, a fifth-generation sheep and beef farmer from Gisborne. Sarah has had a career in HR. She's led a team of 10 people in a large international agri firm. And yet the remoteness of the farm means she'll be unable to continue her career. She is excited and she's eager to start her life. But it doesn't take her long to realise there are ways this family, this farming business operates. And those ways have formed a culture, which is going to make it hard for her to feel like she belongs, to feel like she can contribute. And the culture keeper is her father-in-law, Bob. Bob has brought innovation to the farm. In fact, he's an industry leader in sheep breeding. But that innovation has not extended to the people or the financial systems he uses. Bob likes to think of himself as an old-fashioned kind of guy. He's the boss, he's the leader, he calls the shots. It's his responsibility. After all, there is plenty of time for the boys to get involved once he leaves the farm, once he retires. He's 65, and no one knows when that's going to be. The boys are John and his brother. Bob does not involve them in the strategic or the operation decisions that need to happen on farm. They both have agri-commerce degrees from Lincoln University. There are 4 other people that are employed in that farm, but no one has clarity around their roles. No one kind of really knows where they stand. There is frustration and there is confusion. The skills Sarah has could change much of this environment. She's tried to talk to Bob about putting in a more formal people system, so people feel safe, they know where they stand, they know where they can contribute, they feel like they belong. But Bob has rejected her efforts. Sarah's starting to think succession will never happen. She looks at her wedding ring, a symbol of connection, a symbol of a future. But she's wondering, will she ever have a future here on this farm where she can contribute? Her husband, John, is starting to wonder the same thing. Every day he is managing the tensions that sit between him, his brother, and his father. He's tried to suggest forming a family council or a board, but those efforts have been rejected. Every day he is managing his frustrations, and he's starting to wonder, is it time that Sarah and him left the farm, started their future together where they both knew where they were contributing, where they stood, where they had control of their destiny? Does any of this story resonate with anyone here? Oh yeah, lots of hands. So it certainly does with me. I see and I hear variations of this story daily. How we create environments where people feel they belong has been my life's work. When Sarah feels she does not belong, she withdraws, she keeps silent to keep the peace, she stops offering, but inside she loses confidence. When John feels he does not belong, he stops challenging the status quo or finding solutions. He does only what is required and he withdraws discretionary effort. Inside he is resentful, he is frustrated, and he is worried about the future. When we have cultures of belonging, we have workplaces, we have farms, we have an industry with healthy cultures. Those healthy cultures produce innovation because we are unafraid to tackle the status quo. We can explore possibilities and we can even feel confident to fail, and we all need to fail on our road to innovation. We are more productive because we feel connected, we feel engaged. We want to put in way more discretionary effort. And we find purpose and meaning through contributing together. Our ability to succeed has always relied on our ability to cooperate. It has been that way since the first humans knew in order to survive, it totally relied on their ability to work together. There was no one leader or one hunter. Belonging was deeply rooted in people's ability to contribute. The opposite of belonging is rejection. This is our greatest human fear. To be rejected means we are not with the tribe. And there are many ways rejection shows up in our lives. But let me tell you why belonging is so important to me. It is now 1987, and I have just got engaged to that man up there. We are at a local event, and I'm excited. I've got the pink jumpsuit, the big shoulder pads, even bigger hair. Dancing to Mariah Carey, I won't do that now. I am excited to be meeting people who will be my community, who will be my neighbours for the next 30 or 40 years. But something happens that night that makes me wonder, will I fit? Will I belong? I'm talking to a young woman a similar age to me when she turns to me and says, I don't think you've got what it takes to be a farmer's wife. You don't look like a farmer. Fair point at that stage. You have no farming skills. Equally fair point. And I'm predicting that you will return to Wellington within the next 5 years. And I'm wondering, will this be with or without my husband? Later on in the evening, I'm talking to an older woman, and I offer to help her with the flowers. And she says, yes, you can, but shortly you should have waited to be asked. These are not one-off experiences. I experience many subtle and unsubtle feelings of rejection over the next few years. For the first 5 years of my married life, I cry most days. But I'm lucky. I am given a choice not so many women were given 34 years ago. And it happened with a conversation with my husband over the cornflakes one morning. He looks at me and says, Lindy, based on your last few weeks of performance, we need to free your future up. He kindly says, based on your strengths and your skills, I do not see that being on a three-wheeler on the hills with stock at the end of a drench gun is the best use of how you can contribute. I get involved in the strategic decision-making in our farm, and I return to my first career of nursing, retrain as a plunket nurse, and start my life working with women in agricultural sectors. Life goes on. Children appear. I get more involved. Yeah, it's magic, huh? I get more involved in my community, in on boards. I have my first directorship, and it's a challenging one. We have a hospital that's facing closure. We have a government that is not interested in us anymore. And we have literally formed a human chain, not us, but the community, a human chain around the hospital to keep it open. And we come up with an innovative way to redesign the health sector in our area. We borrow $30 million and we build a brand new hospital. And yet, their very first board meeting, I sit down, and a fellow director turns to me and says, well, we all know why you're here, Lindy. It is because, quote, you have great hair. Now, what I know now that I didn't know then is when we feel that rejection, we interpret it as a threat. And we either freeze, and I have seen that around many board tables and in communities. We are overwhelmed, we don't know what to do. We flee, bury our head in the sand, walk away from the problem, or we fight. We armour up, we push back. I chose fight. I find that fascinating, that 38,000 people think here is a great quality for a board member. Now, I should have left it there. But then I added, and isn't it a pity that as a bald man, you cannot bring that quality to decision making? That wee victory set the next 3 years in conflict. Every time I contributed, he pushed back. And here's the thing, that cultures without belonging drive the wrong behaviours. Now, I would not approach that situation like that now, because what I've learned is to get curious. I've learned to dig into those feelings of being uncomfortable, of feeling threatened, and get to understand what is driving that. And I've got to turn that curiosity on the other person and ask questions. And you know what I've discovered? It is usually fear that is driving their response as well. All of these years, I do not see a lot of women in our sector engaged in their businesses on farm, in their community, on board. And I wonder why. Could it be that they have had experiences like me that stops them from contributing? And if this is true, how do we unleash the latent potential of 50% of our sector to solve our problems? That question leads to a quest, which leads to a mission. 3 years of research led to the formation of an organisation that will transform how our sector sees and helps women feel they belong and know where they can contribute. I'm now going to take us forward. It's September 2010, and I stand in Parliament with Mavis Mullins, and we launched the Agri-Women's Development Trust. That day, we start our first program for women in leadership and governance in our sector. Those women go on to contribute outstandingly in our sector. They became the pathway and the inspiration for other women to follow. It is now September 2020, and I am getting ready to step back from the organisation I founded and leave it in the hands of 2 of my graduates to chair and to manage it. And I'm at a birthday party for the Trust, and I look around the room, and I appreciate that 4,500 women, and some lucky men, have gone through our programs. And I see women like Sandra, an ex-banker, married her farmer, desperate to find her way to contribute and build her community. Together with another graduate, they formed Tairāwhiti Farming Women, a network of 850 women in the remote Tairāwhiti region. I see women like Nikki. Before the program, she's working for a large agri firm, running a team of 5, but wanting to contribute more. She now runs a team of 100 with a $200 million budget. And Veronica comes up to me and says, Lindy, do you remember a few years ago I had this aspiration, this vision to bring irrigation into my community? And I said, I do. And she said, well, I've now chaired this organisation. We've got a grant, multi-million-dollar grant. We're underway. When women find purpose, belonging, and know where they can contribute, everything changes. But I want to be really clear now. This is not about the success of the Agri-Women's Development Trust, although I'm ordinarily proud of that, or even women. It is about the fundamental need for every person to feel like they belong. The opposite of belonging is rejection. And when we let that get its hands on the steering wheel and take control of the direction of travel, we are in trouble. Instead, we need to see fear and be curious and recognise it as an unwanted passenger, but makes us more curious to drive the right behaviours. And what worries me is I see some of these fear behaviours showing up in our responses today. The way that we respond to questions around how we farm, what we do with our waterways. We armour up. The way we sometimes bury our heads around what's happening with carbon. We flee. And worse so, right now, the way we are treating our industry good bodies. We are rejecting their efforts on our behalf. We are splitting the tribe instead of uniting the tribe. We're saying you're either for us or against us. Belonging, the culture of belonging, if it drives the wrong behaviours, drives the wrong outcomes. But you here today have the power to change all of that. Imagine if Bob recognised his fear of leaving the farm was creating this need to control, but he could turn that into creating belonging in his family. Imagine if every single person in our sector knew where they belonged, knew how they can contribute, and then extend that to the 50,000 people that we need to fill our capability gap. Imagine the innovation that would occur. Imagine the productivity that would occur. And imagine the sense of purpose and meaning that we would have. Let's turn that fear into a culture of belonging. And if we do that, we will be unstoppable. That is a future worth imagining. I'm Lindy Nelson. Thank you for making me feel I belong on this stage today.